Would you like to work closer to home, save money on gas, and be rewarded for your hard work and attendance? Then Bellisio Foods is looking for you. That's right, Bellisio Foods is now hiring for multiple positions and shifts with great employee benefits, an on-site health clinic, competitive wages, and advancement opportunities. Bellisio Foods is a company that truly values their employees. Apply online at belisiofoods.com/careers.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the morning show right here on Main Street TV, where it is a lovely Wednesday out on, outside.
Yeah, it's
And
nice.
it's a lovely Wednesday in here because our good friend Josh is here from OSU Extension, and we're going to talk about all things dirt.
We sure are. We had to leave Maddie behind. We're talking about composting and fertilizer today.
What did you do with our sweet Maddie today?
She needed training, so we sent her away. She went 2 hours to go do some training today, so it's just me today. Aren't you lucky?
I am. No, we love to have both of you here on the program together, but separately is just as great. So welcome. And so what have you been up to recently before we get to composting and all that? And it is very, very important, so you should listen up.
Yeah, so this actual week, actually last night, I was at the extension office till about 9:30. We're doing Hunter's Ed, so we're doing Hunter's Education for the kids. So we do that,
Love that.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we'll test out tomorrow. So it's a busy week for me. So start at 8 o'clock, end at maybe 10 o'clock, and repeat it every day.
So now, is this a hunter's education course just for kids, and is it just a 1 day thing, or is it several days, or how's that work?
Yeah, so it's actually the Hunter's Ed that they use through the Division of Wildlife. So technically, while I'm teaching, I transition roles from OSU Extension to Division of Wildlife. Every time I talk about it, I transition to one of their employees, they say. But it's actually all open to the instructor. So this time, just in the fall, I didn't get certified until August. So we had to make it a 3-day class, which typically around the state, you'll find some that are 3, 4, 5-day classes, or you can have some that's just one whole day on a weekend, maybe a Saturday test out on Sunday. It all depends on the instructor. So my image for this is to do like a 3-day class in the fall, and then in the spring before turkey season, doing just a 1 weekend day class. So it's also for any youth that want to do it, but also for adults. So it's open to anyone, but mainly we see a lot of our youth going through it too. And like I said to our adults last night, if you're going to be sitting with the class with your kid, you might as well take the test.
Well, I was just wondering that, kind of like if you're sitting there, you may as well be part of it, right?
Yep, and you can always challenge the kids. Some of the kids outscore the adults. So it's pretty cool. So it's always fun to have the kid be like, I scored higher than you. And it doesn't happen often, but it has happened before.
I can see it. I am a better hunter than my dad. But no, we were, so we've had some guests in here recently talking about the contest that we're running here at Total Media, which is what's it called, Adrian? The Big Rack something? Yeah. A Big Rack contest.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but we had some sponsors in here, things like that, and we were talking about it. And I was talking with some of the individuals about the fact that, we've got to bring up the kids learning safety and learning how to hunt properly instead of just saying, you take a gun out in the woods and whatever. So it's good that they're taking courses like that, especially if you don't have grandpa or, dad or somebody teaching you all the ins and outs of it.
Yeah, it's an awesome class. Like I said, we started it at the extension office just last October, and we had a class where we had about 30 people sign up, and then we had about 55, 60 people show up. So we had that much interest just come, it's a real need that we see here in Jackson County, people wanting that hunter's education. So we did one in the fall, we did one in the spring, and so far it looks like it's working, and it should be going well.
Love that. Absolutely. And, I guess when you think of hunting, you only think of deer hunting, but there's so many other seasons out there.
Right. I talked to the kids last night. I introduced myself and I make them stand up. The 8, 9-year-old stands up and they have to say their name and what
They're
they
terrified.
hunt. Right. The majority of my class this time is doing deer hunting, but there's a couple that branch out to different games. So
Yeah. Because we have what are gosh, there's seasons for everything, aren't there? Like,
there's a whole book where it has deer, you can have turkey, you can have your inland birds, you can have your waterfowl, all different types of birds, and then going into coyotes, all different types. So we actually had our wildlife officer for Jackson County. He showed up to our class last night. And he got
Mr. Ted?
He did, yep.
Love Ted.
Yep, Ted came in. He got to talk to the kids, and he was able to go through the rules and regulations book, and getting that firsthand experience. And it's also the perfect experience to ask him a questions. He's here not to get you, so it's the perfect time to talk to him.
I love that. That's the same to me as like the touch a truck events, and a lot of times like where they have first responders and things there, and get the kids to meet these individuals and understand that they're, again, not out to get you. They're just here to help you and just want you to follow the rules.
Yeah, and it also builds interest,
Sure.
Wildlife officers, there's always a turnover rate, kids, that's a possible career for kids. If you love hunting, you love being outside, and you don't mind having a flexible schedule, that's a perfect career for some of these kids.
I've never understood, and having Ted here several times, and it's always a fantastic show. He's so interesting. But I never understood. I feel like he's 75 places at one time. I don't know how he covers all the area that he covers.
Yeah, I'm sure he works lots of hours, and he's getting plenty of sleep because youth season starts up this weekend. So
That's right. That's right. So, well, very good. So these are just, that's just one of the things that people probably don't know that you're doing out at the extension office that is so helpful to the community. So thank you for that.
yeah, and today we're actually going to be talking a little bit about composting. So I had a request that we wanted to learn a little bit about composting. So
Love that.
it's perfect time for it. We got all these leaves falling down, so you can either just get rid of them, or you could add them to your compost pile. So it's perfect opportunity to start your compost pile to get ready for your spring garden or whatever you want to use your compost with.
All right. Are you going to tell us what we need to be doing?
Yeah, so first off, I want to kind of tell you the differences between fertilizer and compost. Do you know the difference between fertilizer and compost?
Absolutely not. I
Okay.
have no idea. I know that sometimes I mix my horse poo in with dirt and let it sit for a long time and then throw it on the garden.
Okay.
And things grow.
Okay, yeah.
So what is that?
So that's letting it age. So any type of manure that we use, whether that's horse, cow, whatever you're using, you definitely want to make sure that's aged. So letting it sit out for up to a year.
It turns like to dust, basically.
Right. Because it's super rich with nitrogen. You put too much nitrogen on your garden, everything's going to die. It's going to get burnt up. It's going to die really quick. But the difference between fertilizer and compost is fertilizer is it's a compound that you're adding to your soil. It's adding to your soil to make it better. It's kind of like taking a multivitamin for the day. Like, you don't need it, but it helps you throughout the day.
Okay.
And compost, you're actually making soil. So you're not adding things to a soil, you're actually making soil whenever we're talking about composting.
Okay. See? We've learned something new already.
Yeah. And if you're like doing your garden and you're like, I don't want to do composting yet, I want to fertilize. The easiest way to read fertilizer is to look at those three numbers. So you might see a 0-0-0 or a 10-10-10. Do you know what that means?
No.
So
Please tell me.
In our fertilizers, we have three major nutrients that we're looking at. We're looking at our nitrogen, we're looking at phosphorus, and we're looking at potassium. So whenever we look at those numbers, that first number means nitrogen, the second number means phosphorus, that third number means potassium. So whenever it has like a 10, 10, 10, that means for every pound of that fertilizer, you're getting 0.10 pounds of that nutrient that it falls underneath. So if it's 0-0-45. That's going to be one that's going to have 0.45 pounds of potassium. It's not going to have any nitrogen. It's not going to have any phosphorus. It's just going to have that specific nutrient in it.
Okay. So the next question is, obviously, how do you know what you need?
Yeah, exactly. So we want to do a soil test. So if you have a large garden, it's always good to have a soil test. If you have a pasture field, crop field, whatever you plan to do, having a soil test. So we offer that here at the extension office. You can also go to Soil and Water. Danny also does soil test. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you go to. We're both the same price. We'll both come out. We'll both do it for you. But if you want one, you can contact us. We're kind of getting in the point where it might be a little bit too late. We probably could sneak a few in since the ground isn't solid yet. but we want to do those in the fall and the spring just to see what our garden needs so we can go ahead and prepare for the year. Our soil test is going to tell you your pH. It's going to tell you all the nutrients. It's going to tell you how much nutrients you're going to need. So it basically does everything for you. You just have to do a little bit of math on which fertilizer you want to choose.
So is it important as, so Jamie and I just have a very small little garden at our house. We grow things that we need for the restaurant, basically.
Yeah.
Is it important? So we just, cleaned everything out and it's basically a pile of dirt at this point. Do you do anything in the fall to help prepare that for spring planting, or do you just let it marinate over the winter?
So how big is it?
Like not very.
Okay.
Like probably 6 feet wide by 15 feet long or something.
So a lot of it, they recommend that we don't reuse our soil, but we can add more soil to it. And then we can also add some fertilizer additives to it, just because whenever you use that soil, it's going to pull all those nutrients. So now we don't have any soil with any nutrients.
Right.
So you can add more soil to it, or you can add some fertilizer, or you can add some compost. If you plan to do a compost pile, we can add some compost to it. And that might be our fix to our solution. Typically what I tell people is gardening is science, right? And science, we just like to experiment. So if you just have a small garden, it's just for your backyard, just for your enjoyment, I would recommend just, trying things out. Like, you don't need a soil sample because odds are you're probably not going to get the value out of it. It costs $20 to get your soil sampled. Whenever, if you have just a couple raised beds, odds are it's not going to balance out for your cost. Kind of just experiment around, play with some things, put different things in it. Make sure you don't put too much stuff in it, but kind of reading your packages and follow the instructions on how it recommends you to use it. But if you got something small, you definitely don't really need a soil sample, just because you're not going to get that return on investment.
Okay, that makes total sense.
But we talked about composting and we talked about fertilizer. So I like to say composting is feeding the soil, fertilizer is feeding those plants, so that nutrients goes on top of it, and those fertilizer nutrients go into the plants, where our compost, you're feeding that soil, making new soil.
Okay.
So there's
There's
6 things we need to worry about whenever we're talking about composting. One is being heat. So the way that compost is made, it's got these microorganisms on the inside of it, and they're breaking things down. Those microorganisms like it hot. They like it around 90 to 120 degrees. So if you don't have it at that heat, those microorganisms aren't going to work. I like to point it out, like if you have it too cold, on days like where it's 20 and 30 degrees, I don't like to go outside. I don't like to go out and work.
Exactly.
So when it gets too cold, those microorganisms, they don't want to go out and they work. So you want to get your heat around 90 to 120, just so that they're in there, they're breaking down those components, and they're going to be making soil.
Okay.
Our nutrient mix. So this is talking about a healthy balance. So those are talking about our carbons and our nitrogens, our browns and our greens. We'll talk a little bit about that.
Okay. I know the browns and the greens, but that's about all I know.
Yeah. Next thing is oxygen. So I like to say, those microbes that are living in there, they need that oxygen. If you don't have oxygen in it, they're not going to live. So you want to definitely have something in there, whether you're turning it over. There's different bin styles for different structures, but making sure you have something in there that's going to have airflow go in there, that we have oxygen. Keeping it moisture, you want to have it 50% moisture content. That kind of means that whenever you pick it up, it feels moist. It's not going to be too wet. It's not going to stick to you, but it's also not going to be dry where it's dusty. So you want to make sure that the moisture is balanced, and we'll talk a little bit about moisture a little later on. Time, you want to make sure that you have plenty of time. Typically, whenever you're doing a compost, it takes around 6 to 8 months, depending on how well you do it.
Yeah, you don't make compost overnight or in a week.
If you're really good at it and you've got down to a T with all your instructions, people have done it around 3 to 4 months, so you can really accelerate it. But typically, we're looking around that 6 mark range for most people. And then those decomposers, like our fungi, our bacteria, different types of worms, having those access in our compost pile.
Nice. And so, I know nothing about this other than, like I said, taking the poo, letting it dry, and mixing it in with some stuff. So that's all Jen knows.
Yeah. So let me flip our page so make sure that I'm staying on page. So ingredients. So you talked about your manure. If you were to think, is your manure a nitrogen or is it a carbon?
So is that a brown or a green? Is
Yes.
that what you're asking?
Is it a brown or is it a green?
So paper. I would say it's a green.
It's a green? You got it right. So our compost pile, we want to balance between our carbons and our nitrogens, our browns and our greens. So our carbons are our browns.
Okay.
Our greens are our nitrogens.
Okay.
So a good way to kind of think of it whenever you're adding stuff in it, how much moisture does it really have in it? If it's got a lot of moisture, a lot of water into it, we're kind of looking at more on the nitrogen side. So our manure has more moisture in it. We had food scraps, fresh food scraps are going to have some water content in it. If you're looking at our browns, if you look at the leaves that are on the ground, those are going to have less water content. So they're going to be more of our carbons. So when we're talking about our balance, we want to make sure that we're keeping it to about a 30-to-1 ratio. So 30 to brown, 1 to green. So 30 to carbon,
Oh.
1.
Really? I
Yep.
thought it was like half and half. I would have guessed. I didn't know. Okay.
Nope. So whenever you have that much manure, it's definitely good to add some browns to it, just because
Yeah.
it's going to make it accelerate faster. Not saying you don't have to, like you said, you can set it out there and let it age for a year and it'll be good.
Yeah.
But it just takes more time,
Sure.
right? So it takes more time, might smell a little bit worse. Having that, it might cause some issues. But if you add some browns to it, it'll accelerate the process, and you won't get that smell as much.
I was going to say, is it true or is it not true? Because I have read this, that if you're doing compost properly, it doesn't smell.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Whenever you start to smell your compost, that means something's wrong. Typically, that means we have too much moisture in it. That
Okay.
moisture is going to start having stuff just smell bad, and you just don't have that balance. So we're trying to get that 30-to-1 ratio balance.
Okay.
So like I said, our browns, it can be anything from like our dead leaves, our straw, and your horse manure. Do you have straw that's usually in it?
Oh.
Yep, that straw, that's typically whenever you're cleaning the
Okay.
barn, that can
Makes
count as
sense.
some of your browns into it.
Or like sawdust.
Wood, sawdust, that was my next one on the line.
Oh.
Those are going to be your carbon rich ones. Those are going to be the ones that kind of break it down. And when we talk about our nitrogen rich, we're talking about fresh grass clippings. So those
Okay.
are actually on the nitrogen side. Kitchen scraps, coffee grounds, manure, and like I said, too much greens, they cause a sticky, nasty mess.
Okay.
I sent a picture in there that shows kind of like the background, the different proportions each one kind of has. So it kind of just shows the whole list. So if you're looking at manure is a 5-to-1. Like we said, we're trying to get that 30-to-1 ratio. When
Okay.
we're looking at manure, it's about a 5-to-1. So it's definitely on the nitrogen side. If we're looking at our food scraps are about a 15-to-1.
So when you say food scraps, you're not talking about steak and chicken and what are the food scraps that we're talking about here?
Yeah, we definitely do not want to use any type of meat because
Right.
that meat has some oil to it, and oil will kill the microorganisms, or it could have a chance for combustion because it has that grease, it has that oil.
Can you imagine my compost blew up?
It's very, very low that it would happen, but there is a chance that it would catch like a small fire on the inside,
Sure.
kill it, and then obviously you don't have any soil to help make it. But meats, we want to stay away from any type of fats, anything that typically has fat into it, any types of eggs or dairy. Now, eggs, you can use the shells.
That's what I thought.
You
Okay.
just have to wash them. So it's mainly that inside part. So you can take the eggshell, you can wash them, and that's good to compost. You
Okay.
just have to make sure that you're washing them beforehand. Any type of plastics, obviously plastics, it's not going to break down.
No.
If you just toss it in there, you're just going to have plastic whenever you're putting it on in the garden or whatever you use. Any types of wax-coated paper, that's going to cause any issues. Regular paper you can, wax paper you can't.
What about, okay, here's one. And this is a thing, like we all have paper around the house, right? Buy a shredder that costs like, $10 on Amazon. And then you have like these nice shredded papers that you can throw in your compost. I assume that's okay.
Yeah.
But what about like newspapers and things like that have ink on them?
Yep. So typically what I found that you can do that. It should be
Okay.
all right. It's not going to cause too much of a difference.
Okay.
But shredding it, yeah, that's definitely, if you're putting any type of paper in it, you definitely want to shred it just
Because it helps it break down,
yeah,
right?
it's going to help it break
Okay.
down. It's going to make it go quicker. That's our whole point in trying to keep it balanced. We're trying to make
Right.
it a quick process. So we have compost ready for spring because I want to plant stuff in February because It's getting warmer
Because
around
we get
here.
over February real fast. Like, we want, like, no more. I want to start planting things.
Yeah,
Let's
especially-
get this winter out of here.
Especially if you have a greenhouse. I know people that start it usually in January or February. If they've got a greenhouse out there, it blows my mind how they do it, but they
I know.
certainly do it.
I don't understand.
Yeah. Don't want any metal glass, no cooking oils. And this is one that people kind of will forget about. And any invasive weeds or any type of weeds in general, you don't want to put any of those into your compost pile. Because what that's going to do is just going to break down that weed into your compost pile. You know, when you toss it out in your garden, now you're going to have multiple invasive weeds all over your garden. So you're just going to create yourself an issue just by having that in there.
So if you do have grass clippings, you need to kind of think about a non-weedy part of your yard, right?
Right. You want to make sure that you're getting just grass. You don't want to be mowing over any type of weeds that you have in there. If you've got, I have a certain spot where I've got some pine trees in my yard. I want to stay away from those just because it's not really worried about the weed part to it. But pine needles are very acidic.
Yes.
And it's going to drop my pH, and I don't want that. So kind of being cognizant of, like, where's the weeds at? Do I have pine needles? I'm only getting fresh grass clippings that I'm putting into my compost pile.
Okay.
Other than that, making sure you just don't put any bones in there. And typically that's a big list of what people ask. Can I compost? Can I not compost it?
Yeah.
Do you have any ones that you've heard of that you're curious about?
I'm trying to think. I know, well, you mentioned coffee grounds. I know that's something. I assume that's a brown?
Should be a brown. I think it's on my list. If it's dried out, I think it's a brown.
Okay.
But looking at manure,
Interesting.
though, a big one that we get from manure is you want to make sure any manure you use is just from a plant-eating species. Like
Yeah, don't
plant-eating
put your
animal.
dog poo in there.
Don't
Like-
put any carnivore manure in there. It doesn't work
No.
because you still have that oil in it. It's going to eventually kill your microorganisms. So we don't want to do anything that has...
Or
that
human.
eats anything that eats... Or humans.
I guess unless you're a vegan.
Anything that eats meat, you do not want to put in your compost
Okay.
pile.
So this is what, your cattle, your sheep, your horses, all of that stuff. Okay, cool. Because
Yeah.
they eat grass and grain and things like that.
Yeah. So let me send him a quick message over here and see if we can get those compost pictures up.
Okay.
So I sent some pictures of different compost bins, and the bin styles are really unique. So being able to see the different types of bins that people use.
So we bought, speaking of Amazon, we bought a composting thing, and it just sits out on our deck, and it has not been used in forever because I totally forgot that it was there until you came in today. But it's on like a roller, and you just put the stuff in and you just roll it every so often.
Yeah, so that's going to be our rollers, which we've got a picture of those, and I've got them right here. Let me forward it over to your guys' email.
Yeah.
Make sure
We'll get those right on.
All right.
Because no, and I agree with
be
you
sense.
because it's interesting to see the different devices in which you can use. Because they even make, like, again, Amazon. If you don't know what you're doing, they make those little countertop composters and stuff, right?
Right. So there's multiple different ones. So we can talk about the first one. The first one just being an open compost pile, one that everybody's basically going to use. One that's just going to be in the open, just sitting in a pile. See steam coming off on a nice day. It's going to be that fresh compost pile.
Okay.
Our second one can be one that's kind of like a pallet. So you can take pallets that you have and you can kind of make like a box, and you can put the compost in the middle of that. So what's some worries that we have with an open compost pile? Do you have any worries about that?
Well, I would think it would attract critters.
Yep, you're gonna have a lot of critters in it. You're gonna
Yeah.
have them coming after any of those food scraps into
Sure.
it. They're gonna be messing around with it. It might be
yeah.
warm, so they're
Dragging
gonna
it
try to
all
stay
over the
warm.
place.
Right, they're gonna get into it and they're gonna make a mess. Where that pallet's not gonna keep them completely out, but it's gonna block them on certain sides where they can only get in on one section. Now I've seen people do trash cans. So people take trash cans, they drill some holes into it. There's some pictures of it. So we have that open compost bin up there. And then we have a wire compost bin that kind of helps you keep the critters out, kind of locks it in. The issue with that one is you can't really turn it too well.
I was going to say you can't move it around a lot.
With that specific one, you're going to have to definitely add some twigs and sticks into it. because those twigs and sticks are going to act as like a structure. And it's going to create those air pockets.
Yes.
So it's going to keep that air into it. Now it's going to keep your microorganisms alive just because it has some air to it, but it's also going to make it slow down the process. Over on that right side, I've seen a lot of people do the trash can method. It's a really effective way to keep all the critters out. And if you put some holes into it, it's an easy way to add some air. The only issue with this one is trying to get it turned. So like you said, we're trying to turn it every so often. It's usually around every 3 to 5 days. It's recommended just to go out and turn it, just so you're making sure you're getting plenty of airflow.
Right.
So that trash can method is one that is kind of tough whenever you're talking about turning.
What? So I'm looking at the. Can you put that back? Thank you, Adrian. It almost looks like the pile that's on the far left is steaming. Is that normal? I mean, because we talked about things catching on fire or whatever. Is that normal? Should it be steaming?
Now I'm going to quiz you.
Okay.
What's the temperature we want our compost pile at?
Didn't you say 90 something?
90 to 120.
Okay.
So in the middle of that, it's a 90 to 120. So this is just probably taken on like a fall, winter day where it's cool outside. It's just getting that steam off of it. So that's nothing to be worried about. That's just showing that your compost pile is working.
Okay.
So whenever you see that steam coming off, it's working. It's doing something. It's nothing really to be worried about as long as you put the right stuff in it.
Okay.
Hopefully no one tossed any firecrackers or anything in it. That would
Can
be
you
a problem.
imagine? Well, we had a compost pile, but it combusted. It's fine. It's fine.
Looking at the next ones, so we have geobins. I'm not too familiar with geobins. I haven't seen too many people use them.
What is what is a geobin?
I am not 100% sure on those ones. So it's kind of bin that holds it into it. I think it pulls some heat from the outside. I think where it's that black paint type, I think it pulls that heat to it.
Gotcha.
In the middle, we have those compost bins. Wherever we have those pallets kind of put them in order. One thing that's nice about that is you can make separate piles. So you can start a compost in the summer, you can start one in the fall, and you can start one in the winter, and they'll be ready at different times. So you can use them throughout the season.
Gotcha.
So you can separate your compost pile. But like I said, this one kind of still has the critters coming into it. We have the tumblers. The tumblers are a really good one to keep, one, your critters out.
Yeah.
2, add air, because all you have to do is crank it.
Yep.
And it's not too difficult to crank because once the weight gets rolling around, it just kind of goes with it.
It goes on its own.
Right. The only issue with that is you're limited to how much you can put into it,
Yes.
but they make some pretty big ones. I think they go up to like 44, 55 pounds.
Yeah, like a ginormous drum.
Right. So you can put a lot in there, and it's good for airflow, good for mixing, and it's good for anyone who just doesn't have the ability to really take in a shovel out there and start turning it. It's just as simple as cranking it into a circle.
And here's the thing. So we have 17 acres at our house. I could have the world's largest compost pile, but I would want it, out toward the barn area or something. I'm not going to carry all that stuff out there. We all know that, and it's not going to happen. So one of those on your deck or outside your home somewhere in an inconspicuous place, I feel like people would use something like that more often.
Yeah, and it's more eye appealing. Like you don't see a big pile of compost if people are like kind of rolling their eyes at it.
Yeah,
they have, they have no idea what that is at that point. It's just
why do they have a big heap of ickiness out there?
All you have to say is that's where I put my food scraps.
Yeah,
you're not lying to them. That's what you're doing.
So here's what, and maybe I'm cutting you off, and I don't mean to, but I'm going to do it anyway. What can you keep adding to it, or do you need to put everything in there all at one time?
Typically, once it's full, you kind of want to stop doing it, giving it a little bit room in the tumbler, just so like it rolls around, gives plenty of room. But yeah, you kind of want to have some cutoff point to it, just because, like I said, eventually, if you're still putting in food scraps in February, March, those aren't going to get broken down.
But you don't have to put everything in. You don't have to fill the bin up all at one time.
Right. Yeah,
you can add to for a month or so or something like that.
Yep.
Okay.
If you were going from like June and you're going to do your cutoff as October, November, yeah, you can add all that to it.
All summer long.
Wouldn't bother it a bit. You'll just be creating your pile and then just letting it sit for that 6-month period.
Okay. And can you add like the poo to that, or is that you want to keep that separate?
You can add it to it.
Okay.
So whenever you're adding it, just making sure, like, this time of year we have a lot of leaves available.
Yes.
I know I've cleaned my driveway twice.
Oh my
and
gosh.
I've taken probably 15 full big trash cans back to my compost pile.
Yeah.
Compost pile. I don't really I don't have enough to compost those leaves. But yeah, you're gonna have a lot of browns this year. So if you have a lot of manure, if you've got a farm, being able to combine that manure and combining that
And the
leaves at a balanced rate, you're gonna be able to create something that's gonna be really rich for your garden.
Awesome.
Then looking at our next ones that we have, so we have a layer composting. This is one that kind of is like what you said, you want to keep adding stuff to it.
Okay.
So you just put it from the top and you just take from the bottom. So you keep pulling it from the bottom and it keeps slowly putting down with the new stuff. And it's just going to slowly
Gotcha.
keep doing it. So it's one that you can do regenerative and it kind of looks appealing. We have vermicomposting. Do you know what that one is?
I've never heard that word.
That is using worms. So for this one,
Fun.
this is a lot of ones that people, if you've got like an apartment style and you don't mind the worms being, in your house.
Is there anybody that doesn't mind worms in their house?
There's probably a few people
Cheryl.
out there.
Cheryl just doesn't like those things that blow up that go like this.
Oh, yeah?
That's her nemesis.
Anything wiggly.
Anything wiggly.
So but worms are wiggly. They don't bother her. Okay.
No.
Oh, you don't want worms. Okay. Oh, I thought she said she liked worms. Okay.
Well, this one's just going to be a little setup where you can put
Okay.
your food scraps into it, and then you have like a pan with worms in it, and the food scraps will slowly work down to their worms, and then the worms are going to eat it, decompose it, process it, and then you're going to have that organic material at the very bottom of the container.
Well-
So it's in different containers. So you can pull out that bottom container, and you'll have whatever the worms have already created.
So would it be a smart idea to put the worms in like your roller bin thing or no?
I wouldn't put them in there. Just let them naturally come to your natural ones. If they're on the ground,
Okay.
they can naturally come into
They'll
it.
find you.
I've never heard of anybody doing it in the roller bin. I'm sure it wouldn't hurt them, but I can't speak to that.
I mean, it would
I've never
probably
thought
give them
about
a
that.
headache if you roll them around enough.
Maybe a little bit. Our other one is trench composting. So if you know that you have a garden, you know where you want it at, you can just dig a trench. You can just, as the year goes through, you can just toss whatever you want in there, your food scraps, your manure, whatever you're going to mix it with, put your mix in there, and then just cover it up. And then in the ground, it's going to naturally just decompose. And then when you go to plant next year, it's already there. You've already made your new soil underneath.
So when you say cover it up with
So you dug the
dirt?
trench out, and now you put the soil back onto it. So you pull the soil out, put it back onto it.
That's brilliant.
Yep. So
Then you don't have to move it twice.
Yep. The only issue you have with that is you're leaving your ground exposed, so you might have some erosion problems. So if you're doing it on a hill, that top part of your soil might go somewhere else. But that's the only issue with the trench composting.
And or critters digging into it.
Yeah, if the critters can smell that good,
Yeah.
that might be an issue. But you put it down about a foot, someone's got to be dedicated to get down that deep.
I mean,
Yeah.
depends on how hungry they are, I guess.
Right. So, in summer, that's really all I've got for composting. It's good for this time of year. Whenever you're looking for the springtime, you can do all these methods and make some compost. Like I said, our end goal is having it as black as we can get it. It's called black gold. So trying to make it as dark as we can. That means we've got a really rich soil that we're going to be able to add to whatever we want to garden with.
Are there, so, when you think of gardens, you think of tomatoes and corn and, all the things that people grow. Are there different composts for different types of vegetables and things like that? Or is it just like kind of across the board, one size fits all?
Yeah, it's across the board. So like I said,
Good.
instead of trying to fertilize for different ones. So for that example, fertilizing would be your thought process, because there is different rates that those crops are going to pull up nutrients. But with our composting, we're making nutrient-rich soil. So if we're making nutrient-rich soil, our soil should be full of nutrients. So it should be able to pull those nutrients, and then eventually the next year, you would be probably testing to see if you need to add any fertilizer or more compost to it, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. Yeah. And again, if you are, if you have a large garden, I mean, I have to assume that people know this already, but if you have a large garden or you do have a pasture field or something, getting that soil tested, I think would be your first thought. Like you can't just guess what your soil needs, right? Like
Right.
nobody knows that.
Right. I've done a lot of soil tests this coming year just because of the drought. We've had a really issue with the
boy.
drought here in this area. And I've had some people come for their lawns, their pasture fields, their crop fields. A lot of it has to do this year with the conditions we had in the weather. I know we've done some lawns where the lawns just, they ask why was my grass dying? Well, it wasn't getting enough water.
I mean,
that's-
hello, hasn't rained in 4 months, but okay.
That's one of the things. But also the nutrients were also down. So we did a soil analysis. We were able to look, and like I said, $20 sounds a lot of money. Sounds like a lot of money until you realize how much the fertilizer is going to cost to replenish your soil.
Exactly.
For example, a $20 soil sample can tell you that your backyard needs 500 pounds of this specific fertilizer, and that 500 pounds is looking at $1,000, $2,000. Now, do you have to do it all in 1 year? No, you can space it out and continuously adding it. But yeah, we've got a lot of people looking into, their hay, they're looking at their crops. And that's something a lot of our big farmers typically do on a year-to-year basis. They know that it's important to put that fertilizer down just because hay is a crop that's going to pull
Sure.
nutrients out, because unlike corn and soybeans, we're getting potentially 2 to 3 harvests if we're lucky off of hay in 1 year.
Yeah.
So it's sucking up those nutrients really quick. So if you've got a hay field and you're not soil testing, there's a good chance that you're going to need to soil test just because you probably don't have much nutrients in it if you're not adding anything to it.
And the hay thing, and and just having a couple of horses or whatever, realizing that, when we do have a drought like this, there's not a pasture field for them to eat anymore. And, when you're having to throw hay out in the middle of the summer, it gets expensive.
Yeah.
And it gets, honestly, it gets scary, because you're thinking, okay, they don't have anything to eat. I'm having to feed them the stuff that I was going to feed them this winter. And there's not going to be any more hay because we haven't had any rain. And so anything that one can do to boost the development of that hay is great.
Yeah.
It's scary. I mean, it really is.
We're really concerned with how this winter's going to go. We still, I think they said, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but we're around 10 to 13 inches below water that we have normal. So we need potentially 10 to 13 inches just to get caught up. And it's not like at one point we need like an inch here, an inch here, an inch here, just so it's slowly rebuilding that water table.
You're talking about over a foot of rain.
Right. And and from this
you
year's,
don't catch that up.
and this year's drought, we're going to see some effects of it going into our spring and summer of next year. So if I had a pasture field, I would definitely be looking into some reseeding options, because that's something we're probably going to be looking at. Now, we need water to do that, and it hasn't rained too much in the month of October. So kind of looking forward ahead in the spring. If we can get a wet spring, are we going to be able to plant something that's going to fill it in? Because we're going to have a lot of bare spots in pasture fields this coming spring and summer. So someone told me once that, a drought year is worse, but the year after that's also twice as worse, just because if you don't prepare for it, if you're not ready for it, you're going to have the same issue except worse coming up next year.
Oh man, that is some scary stuff.
But yeah,
wow.
so looking at the fertilizer and stuff, it saves farmers quite a bit of money, just because, if they've got to do 10 soil tests, cost them $200. But in the amount of fertilizer they buy, the fertilizer dealer can look at it and tell them exactly what they need, and they can save them money. Because if the fertilizer dealer has no idea what you need, and he's not going to help with you, he's just going to say, well, what do you want? And he's like, well, I can give you this. How much you want of it?
But if you show up with your soil test and say, here, what do I need?
Right. They're going to
help you.
They're going to be honest with you. They're going to look at you. They're going to be able to tell you, and they're going to give you a definitive answer what your soil needs. They're not going to be making any guesses, because they can only help you as much as you're going to help them. So being able to have that soil analysis, they're going to be able just to see exactly what you need, where you need it, and then potentially create you a plan for it.
Makes total sense. And obviously, I would assume that we don't have farmers out there. Maybe we do. When we're talking about composting here, you don't have farmers out there that have 1,000 acres of corn and they're not rolling compost in their backyard, are they? Or
a lot of them.
What's happening there?
So a lot of it's up in the northwestern side of the state, but a lot of them are doing a lot of science with the manure. So doing manure spreading. So Here in
Like
southeastern,
it's like the circle of life, right?
right
Like,
here in southeastern Ohio, we're doing things kind of like on the natural scale. We have a pasture field. The cows go out. They can spread their manure naturally, and that
Yes.
does add some benefit to our pasture fields. Well, we
Sure.
still need to add some more fertilizer, probably, but that does add some benefit that we needed to account for. But up in the northwest corner, they're actually taking different types of manure, and I'm not fully informed on everything they're using, but they're
Okay.
taking different washes, they're doing analysis on it, and they're spreading it over cropland. So they're taking a liquid manure, taking it and just spreading it all throughout crop fields as a cheaper way to
Makes
provide
sense.
nutrients to their soil.
I mean, you're feeding the animal this, they're expelling it. I mean, it just goes round and round, right? You
Right.
have to assume.
And there's large scale composting that they do, and this is more on the commercial level. This isn't really things that any private people do, but it's taking, like, say there was an outbreak of something at a turkey or a chicken or a cow that they have to decompose of those cows. They have to euthanize them. Now what do? We have a bunch of dead cows, dead chickens. What do we do with them? Well, they can do I can't, the word's blanking on me, but there's a certain type of compost that they called where they go ahead and put them all together and they cover them up with soil. And then throughout the year, they let those compost. So they're actually turning those dead organisms that, now we had a product, now it's waste. What are we going to do with it? They're making
Right.
another product out of it. So they're
Oh.
there's big commercial composting. It's just not in what you would probably think of your traditional.
You're not doing that at
composting.
your house.
Right. You're not.
I mean, if you do, that's weird.
there is a lot of science into it. There's
Yeah.
a lot of accounting for how much animal you have in there. There's a lot of science behind it. You have to have a certain training to actually teach it. So
Okay.
that's why I'm not going to touch on it too much. But there is on a large scale composting with animal carcasses.
Interesting. That's a whole other situation, which kind of goes against what we talked about earlier. That
Right.
you don't want to throw anything like that in there, but that's a whole other situation.
Right. Yeah. Don't be doing that in your private homeowners composting.
Yeah, don't
This
stick a
is-
dead chicken in your your rolly bin on
Right.
your
There's
deck.
there's certain regulations, rules, heat that it's got to get to because it's got to get to a higher heat. There's a whole different ballpark.
Okay. Cheryl calls that unaliving them. They're not dead, they're unalived.
Unaliving them.
Yes, they're unalived. I think that's her politically correct way of saying certain things.
Can't get taken off YouTube.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, very good. So, so composting is very, very important. And where, so we've been talking about this today, but where can people go to find resources? Do you have literature at the extension office? Like, where do people go?
Yeah, we've got plenty of fact sheets. There's fact sheets online for our OSU Extension website. If you can't find them, just come in, visit me. We're right off of Standpipe Road. I always like to print stuff off. I can print you off. So this is kind of a talk that I typically do in a presentation, and just to keep my brain in my line, I just have my presentation here. You're more than welcome to have the whole presentation if you want. Like I said, I have a list of all the specific sizes. That might be in one of the attachments that I sent. I don't know which one it is. But there's a list that shows every little ratio that each product is. There it is. So we have that manure being that 1-5, food scraps 15-1, grass
okay.
clippings 19-1. So this is a good one where you can like take a picture of it and just kind of get a rough estimate of what you're adding to it. So say you had sawdust. Sawdust is very, very high. Like we said, we want a 30-1 ratio when it's all said and done. So if you add probably 100 pounds of sawdust, you're going to need a lot of manure to balance that.
Okay.
And if you're a math nerd like I am, you can also do like the math part of it. So you can take, if I have 1 part newspaper, 3 parts grass clippings, 3 part vegetable trimmings, you can do that math. You can multiply it out, and you can do the whole equation down at the bottom, and eventually gives you 332/9, and that's going to give you your 37/1. So like I said, that's close enough that's going to matter. So anything that's typically from a 1 to 20, a 1 to 45, that's typically going to be good enough. That's going to be effective in what you're
Okay.
trying to do.
So that's more browns than greens.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
And again, those browns, it's kind of common sense if you think about it. Greens you think of as like your, peelings and your
Right.
food scraps, and then the browns would be wood and sticks and sawdust and all that stuff. So
Right. The
it's
only one,
brown. Get it?
yep. The only one that's tricky is your grass clippings, because if they're green, they count as nitrogen. Once you let it age a little bit, they're going to lose that moisture. They're going to become one of your browns.
Okay.
But like you said, what color is it changing? It's
Yeah.
gonna change.
Like what?
So-
Just kind of think
Yeah.
about it in your head. Other than poo being brown.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'll throw you off a
that's
little
the
bit.
caveat.
Yeah.
Yep.
But no, Adrian just fell out of his chair over there. He's like, oh my God, you guys. So yeah, very good. And composting, again, you're either throwing it in the trash or you're throwing it in a compost bin outside of your house
Right.
somewhere. Like, you may as well. You have it all.
And if you're just getting started, I mean, like I said, we've got all these leaves, and we also have a holiday coming up, don't we? We have a Thanksgiving coming up.
We do.
There's going to be a lot of food scraps. So if you've got any
Yes.
fruit, vegetable scraps from Thanksgiving, I know
Yep.
a lot of people like pie and turkey. I just know I do. But if
mean-
you have those scraps, get you a 5-gallon bucket. Take it home with you. I mean, that might not be the leftover plate that you want, but it might be one that you might need.
It will help you for your leftover plate in the future.
Yep, it's gonna
Let's
help
talk
you.
about
There
that.
you go. That's a good twist to it. There was something there. I just couldn't find it.
Yeah, no, honestly, I was thinking about personally our little garden that we have at our house. I kind of like your trench method situation, because you could do a trench right down the middle of it. It's only this wide and a bit longer, and then just throw things in there, cover it up, and keep tossing it around, I assume, and let it go.
Yeah. So whenever you do that trench method, like I said, just marking where it's at and then planting directly right on top of it, you're gonna have a pretty good crop as long as you did it right. As long as you have the right
Sure.
mixture.
Yeah.
So
And again, it's all stuff that you have.
right.
We all drink coffee every day. You always have coffee grounds. You always have a peeling of something.
Right.
Just
And if
throw
you're
it all in there.
ever in doubt, just wash it. If you're in doubt of a food, it might have like I said, eggshells. Make sure you're just washing those, because that's the only thing you need to do to make sure it's going to be healthy for those microorganisms in the middle.
Okay. And I didn't know about washing the eggshells. I knew you could use eggshells, but I didn't think about the washing them part. So
Yep.
yeah.
That inside has that oil, it has that fat content, and that's
Sure.
what we don't want into it.
And also just, it's pretty good thought process just to wash things in general anyway, whether it be fruit, vegetables, whatever, because God knows what's on them.
Right. Right.
And then you're throwing that back into your soil. So
Right.
yeah, I gotcha. So tell us a little bit about some of the other things that you have going on.
Yeah, so we're moving into our slower season. We're moving in that holiday season where everything seems to kind of slow down just a little bit. For my end of extension, we're focusing on pesticides. So pesticide training will be coming up here in January, February, March. I know I got to go to a 2-day training here in Columbus. That's what OSU Extension likes to do. They like to put all of our trainings in December. So it seems like I have a training every single week. So I'll be like living in Columbus for most of December.
Yay!
But we'll be doing different trainings to get us ready for the 2025 year, getting programs ready for 2025, because
Awesome.
it's almost 2025.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
It was like, I tell you, there was like Thanksgiving or Halloween, and everyone was like that. And then it was over, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like the holiday time.
Yeah.
So I'm like, now what?
Yeah. And,
It's almost here.
and for 4-H, it's beginning their new year. So they're doing their re-enrollments. Re-enrollment, I think, just opened up. Don't quote me on that, because that's Maddie's job. I'm not 100% sure on everything she does.
You don't want to get you in trouble.
I don't wanna
we
get
won't
yelled
get you
at.
in trouble. Yeah.
But I know that re-enrollment's opened up. So if you're in 4-H, you can re-enroll back in 4-H, and that should be open until April. So a lot of exciting things happening. We're slowing down. We're at our end of the year, but getting ready for 2025. That's the name of the game, getting the programs on the books and
Yeah.
ready to go.
Got to think all of the things in advance, right?
Yeah. Like, for example, we have our Farmers Club coming up here on Monday, and our Farmers Club's going to be talking about timber management. So we just got a new forestry extension specialist. We had
Oh.
Dave Apsley. I don't know if
Yeah.
you know Dave. Dave,
Yeah.
he retired from OSU Extension, so we just refilled his position. We have Jim Downs. He's going to be coming and talking to our Farmers Club about, good timber management strategies and what you need to do or what you need to plan to do before harvesting any timber.
Awesome.
And we just finished our Day in the Woods series program. Like I said, everything's coming to an end now. We're kind of getting to that point where we can take a breath. I won't be able to do that until hopefully next week.
I don't think ever. But
I'll tell you what, those hunter ed classes, they're a monster. They told me not to do it by myself, and I decided to do it by myself. And then I'm like 3 bottles of water later after talking for so long.
Yeah.
I was trying to breathe. I forgot how to read halfway through. We made it through night 1. But,
well, good.
Yep.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for spending your morning with us and sharing this valuable information. And I hope maybe it'll just get somebody motivated to go out there and start. Just start.
Yeah.
And again, if you mess it up, who cares? You can
Right.
fix it. Like, it's not a big deal.
It's a science project. That's what
Yeah,
science
it's just
projects
fun.
are for. Yeah.
Harness your inner child and do it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, very good. Well, we'll let you get back
Yep.
to work. No, you're very, very busy. And I think we do have another guest waiting in the wings. So have
you
a
guys.
great day.
Yep. You too.
All right. And we have a message. We'll be right back after that.
At Vinton County National Bank, we believe in supporting the areas where we live and work. Now, we'd like to honor those who also serve our communities. Our new Community Champions account is especially for first responders, veterans, active military, and anyone employed in the fields of healthcare or education. This account offers rewards, discounts, and other benefits to those who give so much to others. Vinton County National Bank, rewarding those who serve.
We are back, and we have a very special guest also here in the studio this morning who is going to be talking about something very sweet going on in our area. Could you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Amanda Clark. I am a member of the Jackson County Women's Club, and I am here to talk about the candy store.
Woo!
It's that time of year.
That's exactly right. And as Josh and I were just talking about, it was like Halloween time, and then Halloween's over, and you're like, oh my God, now it's the holiday season. I mean, it is. Like, we're getting ready for Thanksgiving in a week or so, and then it will be full on Christmas, and it's time for candy.
Yes, it is.
Man, and you all do such an amazing job. So let's talk about the candy store.
Well, it's our annual fundraiser. It
Yes.
is the primary source of fundraising for us. We use all the funds for putting back into the community, primarily through scholarships, one to each high school in the county.
Yes.
And also lots of other smaller areas, the food pantry, the Elizabeth Hope.
Yes. So many things that you all give to throughout the year.
Yeah. So we have 2 locations again this year. We had 2 last year, and luckily we've had been very fortunate to have the spaces donated by the owners. So we are in
So
Wellston
sweet.
again, and we are in Jackson again. Same locations. The Jackson
Oh, great.
location is 269 Bridge Street, right around the corner from here, I guess.
Yeah, it's and the great thing is there's plenty of parking, easy to get in and out.
Yep, it is. And our other location is in the Yesterday's Antiques Donna Summer building
Okay.
in Wellston at 1024 South Pennsylvania, right on the main drag as you're driving into Wellston.
Love that.
So there's plenty of parking there as well.
Is the Wellston was that new last year?
It was our first year in
I thought
Wellston
so.
last year, yes. And we're
Must have been a
very-
success. You're doing it again.
It was, and this year we're offering different hours at the locations just
Okay.
to help accommodate people who work, etc. So Jackson, we are open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 5.
Okay.
And in Wellston, we'll be open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 6.
Okay.
So it's not that far. If you can't make it to the Jackson location and you need to go after 5, you can go to the Wellston location.
Very good.
And we will have the same candies at both locations.
Okay.
So.
And the great thing is for those who want to participate in buying candy or whatever as gifts, and you all have, well, I'll let you talk about the array, but you have like the sugar-free and all of this, and it is so good. Like, it's really good stuff. So tell us how this candy shop works. If someone's like, Cheryl's new to the area, if somebody's new to the area, they're like, what is she talking about?
Well, we buy bulk candy from 3 providers.
It's like being a kid in a candy store.
It
Literally.
really- it is. And this year we have 88 varieties of candy. And like I said, sugar-free as well as regular. Everyone's excited that we have the same vanilla peanut clusters that we had 2 years ago, not last year, because last year's were good, but they weren't as good. So we went back to our old variety.
Okay.
And, I don't know, we have hard candies, chocolates, and gummies, and
all of the candies that you could possibly want. And like I said, a sugar-free variety, like a large sugar-free variety as well too, which I know a lot of people really enjoy that because
I think 20 of our varieties are sugar-free.
yeah. So there's something for everyone there.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so let's talk about the women's club in general for a moment. Tell us about that.
Well, we're a nonprofit. We just do things to raise money so that we can give it back.
Yeah.
We have the primary fundraiser is our candy store.
Sure.
And last year we started adding raffles to our candy stores as well. So we'll be selling tickets for raffle items.
Oh,
and then
fun.
we also participate with a few other things in order to try to give back. And we have several members who work with the food pantry directly in both Oak Hill and here in Jackson. We have, and I am actually a little bit new to our Jackson County Women's Club. I've only been here for 3 years. So
Okay.
I'm still, we have a lot more experienced members.
Yeah.
But our current president, Rhea Shoup, she will be stepping down in December because we had our elections and our officers are changing. So
Okay.
if you do have our Facebook page, sorry, I don't. No,
You're
I was going
fine.
to do all this other talking. You can go on our Facebook page and contact us if you're interested in joining.
That's what I was going to ask. Is it just Jackson Women's Club or how?
It's the Jackson County Women's Club.
Jackson County
So,
Women's Club.
We encourage anyone from anywhere in the county to come and
Great.
meet with us. We meet
Perfect.
once a month, so it's not too inconvenient. We do a lot of organizing, and that's great.
Yeah.
Quick meetings.
Well, you do a lot of good, and that's the whole point.
We try.
Yes, absolutely. And everybody loves candy. Sorry, if you don't like candy, there's something. It's like not liking puppies. Like there's something wrong with you. So this, and what I love about the candy store is you can go and you can buy and you can just divide it up, make these really cool little gift bags or gift boxes for people, and everyone loves it.
Yeah, and we do also offer a service where we do treat bags.
Okay.
So you can come to us, say you need 30 treat bags
Okay.
for a family event, for a church event,
Love
for a club
that.
event. You can tell us how much you want the value of each treat bag, and we will put together treat bags for you for your event.
Wonderful. So you say, okay, I need 20 $10 treat bags.
Or
Then you know what you're spending. And
$52 treat bags.
yeah, and
You
it's
know,
done
could
for
be-
you, which is even better.
Yep.
So how would one get a hold of you if you wanted to do something like that? Would you just stop in?
You
or
can stopping in is the easiest because we
Okay.
have forms for you to fill out, and we
Okay.
can talk to you about what kind of candies you want and stuff directly. You can also go onto the Facebook page and arrange, send a message and arrange. And we do also have an email address to it's Jackson County Women's Club at yahoo.com.
Okay, easy enough.
peasy.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have a business out there, or you are part of a club or whatever, and you want to do maybe just a nice little gift for somebody, let them do it for you. That's great. Yeah. Okay, so candy store. Oh, one thing I will tell you all out there, y'all sell out pretty fast.
Certain items are very popular. That's for sure.
So don't mess around. Get to the candy store.
Oh.
When does it open? That
Well,
kind of
we
thing.
are actually opening just a hair early
Okay.
this year, this Thursday. So
Already?
tomorrow. Yeah, already.
Yeah.
Both locations will open tomorrow, 10 a.m. And we will be open until we sell out or Christmas, whichever comes first.
So here's the thing. They pretty much always sell out. So make sure you get there fast.
Please
That
do.
would be my one recommendation. And especially if you want something specific. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. What are your top 3 favorites? candy-wise?
I would say my favorite is the dark chocolate orange peel,
Okay.
which is not everybody's favorite, I know, but that makes it better for me because there's more. And we have a new candy this year that it's nougat jujubes. It's like a almond nougat with little jelly candies chopped up inside. I love those.
Okay.
And now a third. Anything caramel.
Okay. Now, working at the store, do you get to sample them all just so that you can sell them?
Actually, we most
Is that a
often-
benefit?
We do a couple samples, but primarily, actually, we buy from ourselves so
Okay.
that we can always give back to the community.
Love that. See, they're awesome. So, okay, so Jackson Candy Store is located on Bridge Street, kind of right
Across from-
behind where Marion C. Lewis Furniture was, if you know that, or catty corner from the dollar store.
Yes,
The
right-
new dollar
Yeah,
store.
right next to the bridge.
Yeah. Yep. On Bridge Street, next to the bridge on Bridge Street. And then in Wellston, you are on Pennsylvania Avenue,
Yep.
right?
Yep, right on the main drag as you're going through we're in the side entrance of the building where Yesterday's Antiques is, and Donna Summer Realty.
Yep. And you'll have signage.
Yep.
Look for the festive
Look for the Christmas decorations in the
Yes.
windows.
festive decor, if you will.
Yes.
Well, very good. Well, thank you so much for spending your morning with us and
Thanks for having me.
bringing us the best news. That's so good.
Yep.
Love that. And candy store opening tomorrow. So make sure that you take a minute to stop by and see that and let them do some of your Christmas shopping for you. All right. Well, we have to get out of here for the day. Hope that you have enjoyed, and we will be right back here tomorrow. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
From breaking news to heartwarming stories, The Telegram is your ticket to the latest buzz in town.
Read your daily dose of local headlines, sports, and entertainment and more in hand and on paper.
Get a print and digital subscription for only $7.95 per month. Delivered fresh every Wednesday and Saturday.
Visit thetelegramnews.com or call 740-286-3023 today.
Don't just read the news, be a part of it.